Welcome to ChristiTutionalist Politics Podcast, aka CTP, in association with TheLibertyBeacon.com. And I am your host, Joseph M. Leonard, and that's Lenard. CTP is your no muss, no fuss, just me, you, and occasional guest type podcast. I really appreciate you tuning in. As Graham Norton would say, let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. This is going to be another one of those slightly odd episodes because it's going to get a lot of people's panties in a bunch. I'm sorry if my saying it that way upsets anybody, but that's the point. This episode is likely going to upset some people. And why do I say that? Because it's called The Lessons of Reagan Democrats Relate to Today's Politics. So I'm going to be talking Reagan and Trump. Now, a lot of people loved Reagan. A lot of people hated Reagan. But we didn't think in terms of, or there weren't enough at that time during Reagan to coin such a thing as Reagan derangement syndrome, although I have no doubt there was a degree of that in some people. And today, of course, there's people that love Trump, there's people that hate Trump, have Trump derangement syndrome. Things have gotten more polarized, and unfortunately, the point here, more personal. As you've heard me say, I deal in principles, not personalities. But this show is going to kind of look at things, both policy, principles, and personality. Ronald Reagan, of course, they said, oh, celebrity, just an actor. He could never be president. Well, not true. Ronald Reagan was governor of California back when California was actually a red state, and therefore had executive experience before moving to national politics. And then, of course, he spent time in national politics before actually becoming president of the United States. Whereas Trump, any politics there? Well, yeah, kind of, sort of. People like to say, well, he had no political experience. I don't know that I agree with that or not, because as a New York real estate guy, he dealt with a lot of politics and politicians behind the scenes, plus being a millionaire, then billionaire. He moved in the millionaire and billionaire movers and shakers crowd. You can't convince me there isn't a lot of degree of some politicking that goes on in there. It's obviously not public office type thing. Now, I know this will upset some people, but remember the Rodney Dangerfield movie, Back to School? And he's in the economics class, and they're making a imaginary factory, and Rodney's character is going into, why don't we build it in Fantasyland? Because you're leaving out all, the backroom shady dealings, the greasing of the palms. That's the terminology I'm looking for. Now, I'm not accusing Trump of any of that. I'm not saying or taking a position on that one way or the other. What I am saying is, obviously, there is some degree of potential horse trading or compromises or politicking that goes on behind the scenes. And remember, too, it took Donald Trump to get involved with the rink at Central Park A lot of politics involved there to get that all straightened around. It took Donald Trump to get involved with, after 9/11, a lot of the hemming and hawing about whether we should or shouldn't be rebuilding right on ground zero. What should be built on ground zero? Some people wanted to rebuild the exact towers again. I don't think that was practical, but I understand the desire, the nostalgia, and basically the flipping the middle finger to people. But Donald Trump did get involved, like him or hate him. This is just reality. He stepped in, got involved, and helped broker deals so that the Freedom Tower could move forward. So obviously, there's some politics in his background. But again, he didn't serve in an office as an executive or anything like that. He dealt with a lot of politicians. So there was that. There's the other obvious comparison, celebrity status. Because again, a lot of people forgetting that Reagan was governor of California said, oh, he's just an actor. He's got no chance of becoming president and blah, 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 blah. And no one thought in these terms then, but Reagan was able to get a lot of Reagan Democrats, as they became known. Now, they obviously weren't principled conservatives behind Reagan because Reagan never had control of the House of Representatives. With the amount of votes Reagan got over Carter and then over Mondale, that landslide over Mondale, somehow he didn't have the coattails to give him control of the House of Representatives, and he only had control of the U.S. Senate 2 years out of his 8 years. So why do I mention that? Again, we never thought it at the time, but given people saying people following Trump are just a celebrity cultist crowd, looking back now, hindsight being 2020, those Reagan Democrats were probably indeed Reagan celebrity cultists and voted for him based on that factor. Again, since he didn't have the coattails to sweep Republicans into the House and Senate, but 2 of the Senate years of the Congress while he was in office, we'd have never thought in those terms then. We have to now look back, slightly different lenses. We've learned now these things happen. There are indeed people who are more into cult of personality rather than principles. And I keep saying principles, not personalities. But I say that because a lot of people accuse Trump followers of that, being cult of personality followers. But again, Trump had some political background. Trump had what many deemed as the right policy. So I'm not taking a side here one way or another, who followed him on policy and who followed him based on the celebrity aspect, but just to say clearly there is a similarity there. Some of that had to be happening. I'm not saying I'm not making any accusations of anyone in particular. You have to look in your mirror and be honest with yourself what column you fall into or not. I'm not going there. That's not the point here. I'm just making these comparisons, again, the lessons of Reagan Democrats as it relates to today's politics. The other thing, obviously, pointing to celebrity of Trump, was The Apprentice. Obviously, a lot of people knew Donald Trump not as a real estate tycoon, but only because of The Apprentice. And a lot of people knew Reagan because of his movies and later being spokesperson for General Electric. So there are these similarities, whether you want to deal in them or not. How much they factor in is my point here, is just the conjecture I'm making, what I want you to think about. I'm not trying to lead you one way or the other. I'm just stating these things that are there, some things that people say. You have to make your own considerations and determinations. The Celebrity Apprentice obviously garnered Trump a lot of following and a lot of rappers, because Donald Trump had so much money. A lot of rappers always, of course, sang in their songs about being the next Trump, right? Being a millionaire or billionaire. So he got a lot of free press from that, as Reagan had from his movies and his GE days. So the Reagan Democrats may have been celebrity cultists of the day, but we never thought in those terms. And again, there probably were some with Reagan derangement syndrome. We never thought about it in that light, those terms. Today, clearly, there's a lot of people who love Trump, may be celebrity oriented until after his first term. He then had a track record. So for 2020 and now 2024, there is policy to stand on, a record to show, not just promises made. Like Reagan had California, his governorship, to point back as a record. Trump in 2016 didn't have that. So I have no doubt there was a lot of celebrity cultism in 2016, but come 2020, there was a record to judge Trump on. I don't think it's fair to then now say 2024, it's all celebrity cultism stuff, although I have no doubt, like with Reagan, there's still some of that involved. Other similarities. Now, Reagan actually started Make America Great Again. I know a lot of younger people aren't going to know that. Bill Clinton and Al Gore tried to steal that and got themselves in trouble because they had Make America Great Again buttons with the Confederate flag. But of course, you know, that's a whole other story. Confederate flags for a Republican are a problem. Confederate flags for a Democrat, who were actually the Southern slaveholders who fought a civil war to keep slaves, you know, double standard. That's a whole other episode, whole other story, of course. And the other thing is, Trump, very much like Reagan, like John F. Kennedy, understood peace through strength. That if you show weakness, your enemies run amok. And we've seen that countless times, that we don't engage in peace through strength. The other, third thing, tax cuts. JFK understood the Laffer curve before Laffer ever demonstrated it in chart form. You lower rates and you actually get more revenue into the government, not less. There may be a temporary dip as things shift, but when you cut taxes, as long as you don't go too far, you do it right, you do it across the board, as JFK did, as Reagan did, as G.W. Bush did, as Donald Trump did, more revenue actually comes in. The issue isn't the revenue. more keeps coming in every year. More and more and more revenue comes in. But if you make those tax rates at a decent, sweet spot, people hide the income loss and actually paying their fair share. You know, those people always talking about paying the fair share. Well, the wealthy actually pay 50% of the taxes in this nation, and they don't make up 50% of the population. I'm getting a little off here. The point being the Laffer curve. JFK. I'm tired of hearing this about only, Republicans cutting taxes. Democrats, indeed, usually always want to raise taxes. JFK wasn't that way. JFK, many deem, was a somewhat conservative Democrat. Can argue whether there's any left now or not, but JFK understood that. And that is going to be about it. This is going to be short. I've got another segment to get to. I just wanted to go through the then versus now and how things are similar now to then, but different from then to now. There's a whole lot more, it seems, personal animus in the decision making rather than principles. The bottom line point of this show. I'm not trying to convince anyone to vote a particular way based on anything I've said here. I just wanted to make that comparison because others have mentioned comparisons, and some say, oh, Trump is nothing like Reagan. There are some comparisons there, obviously. Whether you choose to see them, whether you think they matter or not, that's up to you. My point in this show is discussing similarities and differences. Thank you for tuning in. I just wanted to make a brief statement about the endorsement or the lack thereof of candidates running for office. I have had several people ask me, well, who do you endorse for office? And while I used to do that all the time since starting the ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast, I have made the overt decision to not endorse candidates. People ask, well, who do I deem a ChristiTutionalist Politics candidate that I support for office? The point and purpose of my starting the show to not let me be the influence on you, but about influence from above, about going back to the Bible, getting back to the scriptures in full context, deciding our political decisions based on voting biblically principles, not worldly principles. I am another person of this world, so who I'm supporting in my mind will be those that are ChristiTutionalist Politics candidate. I don't want my influence to be the one that's there, but you to prey on these things and reach your own conclusions. Now, I'm human. I'm frail, able and capable of making mistakes. And if I make a mistake at some point in time, I will own up to the fact that I think I had made a mistake. But to avoid any potential influence of supporting someone mistakenly, again, I want your influence to come from prayer and above, not from me. Now, that is not to say I haven't endorsed in the past. Again, yes, I've endorsed people all the time, right up until the point of creating this show. I just now am making the overt decision to not do that. It's not to say there aren't people that I certainly support. That is also not to say that I don't belong to a political party or another. I try to avoid direct partisan discussion, however, on this show most times. It's not to say it doesn't ever happen, but I try to avoid it. And that's not to say, again, I do belong to the Republican Party. I'm not lying. I'm not hiding. I'm not trying to misrepresent anything. Until I invented the term ChristiTutionalist, I used to say I am conservative by choice, Republican only by necessity. That, to me, is the only party that I'm currently able to work within to further ChristiTutionalist politics values. I'm not trying to push any of that on anyone, because that's not to say there aren't others in other parties who can be ChristiTutionalist. It's just that the GOP lends itself more, given the platform, as a ChristiTutionalist party. And again, back to endorsements. That means trying to be nonpartisan in that regard, trying to avoid, again, my undue influence in the situation, but you relying on your return to the scriptures, the whole Bible, in context, to then shape your worldview and how you view and question candidates, which is not to say candidates can sometimes lie. And there's where our mistakes can happen. So we have to hope and pray that we are engaging with truly biblical-based candidates that we are supporting. Currently, since I mentioned, yes, I am a delegate for the GOP, so yes, I am involved in the chair race. I am not endorsing or opposing any candidate in particular. Well, that's actually not true. I have said Ronna must go from the RNC chairmanship. I don't think she's done a good enough job. I'm not endorsing any particular replacement. I absolutely, positively do not support, however, her illegitimate or improper overthrow and removal. If you can convince her to resign so that she could be replaced, that's fine. That's proper to go about. If you want to replace her with whomever your candidate is, it is up to you to then indeed put up that candidate at the next proper, legal, correct time within the framework of rules and law to do so. Why am I saying this? Because being in Michigan, we're seeing a fiasco going on with the Republican Party chair currently. That is currently Christina Caramo. She's done some good things. She's fallen short in other regards, in my opinion. So do I think perhaps we need a change? Sure. But there is currently a group of rogue delegates trying to create an improper and illegal sub-convention that is a group of small elites trying to overthrow the current chair illegally, improperly. You want to replace her? Get a candidate, and convince the delegates at the next full convention where the chair would be voted on, and do it properly. You do not get to usurp and overthrow. Being a ChristiTutionalist is about doing things properly, not lying, not cheating, not stealing your way to power. Bottom line is, this isn't about me trying to direct you to a decision. This is about me saying, pray, be in your Bible, and look for those who indeed fit the ChristiTutionalist Politics bill, more or less bill of health, to use that term. Thank you. I hope I haven't lost some people here. I know that's going to upset some people. I'm sorry. I'm upsetting some people one way or the other. Also, I'm not being a hypocrite when I talk Sinos, rhinos, and fascocrats. Some might be saying, you're a hypocrite. You talk endorsing or opposing people all the time. Yes, I am opposing certain groups, certain types of people all the time, not endorsing necessarily any individual over another, but talking in general terms, classes of people, Sinos and rhinos, as they would apply within the Republican Party, fascocrats as not ChristiTutionalist based within the Democrat Party, not trying to paint all as a broad brush. So I hope this clarification is helpful. I hope it matters to you. I hope I'm being clear. I don't in any way, shape, or form want to hide or mislead what this show is about, what I'm doing here, who I am now, and trying to accomplish with this podcast about bringing everyone back into the Bible in full context and voting biblically. That means on an individual basis, about individualism, not collectivism. I'm clear on that. I stand for freedom and individualism, not communism, collectivism. That to me is biblical, and important that that distinction be made. Jesus was not a socialist. That's why I say, get back in your Bible. We are to be our brother's keeper. That is an individual, personal responsibility commandment. That does not mean render unto Caesar, one of the most often twisted and distorted out of context terms, to communism on a political, overall, fascistic-like, top-down, ruling elite scale. Community matters on the biblical level. Yes, it takes a village. Your friends, your family, your neighbors. That is micro-communism, if you will. Community, as I talked about in the Politics of Potterville episode, micro versus macro. I hope you now understand. Obviously, I'm supporting people that I feel fit the ChristiTutionalist Politics bill. I want you to pray on it and support biblical candidates. And yes, the ChristiTutionalist Politics book, on the back, I go into why I'm talking this. Many on the left, again, here's left, right, so I'm making distinctions, but not painting everybody. I'm not saying liberals here, I'm saying leftists here. There is a difference. On the back of the ChristiTutionalist Politics book, I talk about the Jefferson letter that atheists, those who want to undermine our Judeo-Christian ethos, foundations of America, twist and distort. The Jefferson letter that they coined separation of church and state from is not freedom from religion that they peddle. We have First Amendment freedom of religion, and that's what this show is about. The Jefferson letter in proper context. That does not mean Christians should not be involved in politics. We should. My friend Neil Mammon has a great book. Jesus is involved in politics. Why aren't you? Why isn't your church? I promote not just my own book, but his book and other faith-based, biblically sound, politics-based book. Thank you again for tuning in. As I've said in another episode, so again, I'm repeating what you'd think I'd get better at this by now, but I'm just a man. I'm human. I'm frail. I'm far from perfect. You get this, me mumbling, bumbling, stumbling as I work through all these thoughts about this new concept of being a Christitutionalist that I hope you're joining me on this journey about and for, to make us all more godly and roar, as I've said, not the Katy Perry roar video fanboyism. Roar, restore our American Republic, restore our Judeo-Christian ethos, ethics, foundations, not this leading us down the road away from the constitutional limited republic we are to a mobocracy, an ineptocracy, a kleptocracy that many are trying to use communism and the promise of equity under socialism that's failed everywhere is trying to peddle. But anything but a meritocracy like we were founded on. Again, Jesus wasn't a socialist. He was about the individual, saving your soul as an individual, not you as a collective. Just wanted to give a brief shout out and thank you to all the folks on iHeartRadio and Player FM for being 2 in the top 3 platforms that my show, ChristiTutionalist Politics, is most often listened to. So thank you all. Take care. God bless. Thank you for having tuned in for ChristiTutionalist Politics show. If you haven't already, please check out my primary internationally available book, Terror Strikes, coming soon to a city near you. Available anywhere books are sold. If you have locally run bookstores still near you, they can order it for you, or autographed copies are available online direct from me via terrorstrikes.info/shop. Be sure to check out more about today's discussion at thelibertybeacon.com, where my articles drop every Saturday. And let me remind, over time, the fancy high production items will come. But for now, for starters, it's just you as a very appreciated listener by me. All substance, no fluff, no fancy high production intro or inserts, at least yet, just straight to key discussion points. A show that looks at a variety of topics, mostly politics, through a Christian U.S. constitutionalist lens. So again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Take care. God bless. Like and subscribe to ChristiTutionalist Politics podcast and share episodes. We need your help to grow the show.